pass out the mic if you guys want.
Yeah, so I'm Larry Wong. I'm a biology professor here. And I think Judith, Judith and I have a long-standing experience with this. I think that one of the things that the students can do is ask, what is not taught at Brandeis? What is not being taught at Brandeis? We have no engineers. We have no geologists. We have an environmental studies program that that Eric is involved in, but truly has been marginalized in many respects.
These guys are much more
mostly contract faculty.
Yeah.
We are not engaged. We're not engaged in the serious teaching of a lot of things which are relevant to this discussion. And yet we have a lot of talk about social justice, about sustainable development, and so forth. So I think that almost the primary thing that students could demand is to broaden their own education in this regard. And instead of just simply saying protesting, there is a real room for altering the academic discussion at Brandeis and linking things like sustainable development, linking social justice with the environment, and making those things much more mainstream than is currently the discussion. And so, really, I think that's where, I mean, we are, after all, a teaching environment, and at the end of the day, you're a much greater force if you know something, and that's true for all of us.
Thank you. Do you guys want to comment on that, or should we just go to the next question?
Just get some more questions.
Yeah, just that there is a climate change course taught in the spring at the Heller School, and the undergraduates are welcome to come along. Full semester course. I co-teach with a political economist.
There happen to be a number of very good institutions in the Boston area, and that we can, and I know I've talked with my friends over at Tufts, find ways to partner with them and figure out joint programs. And not only do we don't have to build everything ourselves here, but find other ways to, and Tufts would be one, MIT might not, but there are ways to do that.
Can we get some student voices in here? Yeah.
So I'm in Frank's Life on a Changing Planet class right now, and some of the suggestions that we had for the education at Brandeis were creating or making a climate change class every student would have to take a minimum of one climate change class. We could create build the orientation program so that Brandeis is introduced as an environmental school, as an environmentally friendly school. I mean, we would have to actually be environmentally there are a lot of things that can be done in the education system here that aren't being done right now. I think the environmental studies program, it's really amazing, but it's very small. It's like a niche program. Not a lot of people know about climate change. Not a lot of people know what divestment is. So
remember that niche rhymes with ditch.
You feel like you're in the ditch?
So this is not really going to be a question. I guess it's more of a introspection and a retrospection of the past almost 4 years that I've spent at Brandeis, and I'm about to graduate. So a little about myself. I'm from Nepal. I was born and raised in Nepal, and it's the 4th most vulnerable country to the impacts of climate change. And when I came to Brandeis, I came here specifically because there were a lot of things I wanted to study. There were a lot of things I wanted to learn. And education at Brandeis has been a very personal process for me. And I've taken classes with 4 of you here, including Gordy. A class that I'm taking with him right now has really immensely touched me on a personal level. And it's really made me question the things that we value. You know, it boils down, especially for me, that we want constant growth. We want infinite growth on a finite planet. And it's not so hard to think that, wow, maybe we value the wrong things here. Really, because maybe we need to start listening to each other more. Maybe we need to think of ourselves not just as ourselves, because now that I have friends from all over the world, it's not hard for me to extend my love to everyone. You know, and I think that is at the heart of not just climate change, but the world right now in terms of how we interact with each other. And it's really heartening to see a lot of student initiatives at Brandeis, the Gosman, the solar panels on the gym, or the Tap Brandeis bottled water banning campaign that my friend started, and I was a part of it. You know, so it's very encouraging, and having professors like you, it makes us happy because you're not just teaching this, but you are also personally invested in it. And it's been great, and there's always room for improvement. You shouldn't stop. There have been moments when I question myself, why am I even bothering? But then when I stop, I become even more depressed. And then again, yeah, because once you act, it leads to more action. It's like the snowball effect. You do something, you meet other people who are doing certain things, they're going to put you in touch with some other people, and then suddenly everyone around you, they're doing things, and you feed off of your positive energy. Okay, that was
Thank you.
Can I comment briefly on that?
Yeah, of course.
So Alina's point about infinite growth on a finite planet is, of course, an academic movement. The ecological economics movement, there's now a journal about it. The work of Herman Daly in establishing that as a subdiscipline within economics is extremely admirable. I'd love to see us have a professor focused on that in the economics department here at Brandeis. Also, that point about the sort of addictiveness of action, we can get addicted to anything. We've seen that, Some of us are addicted to exercise or the internet or drugs or alcohol or work or what have you. Why not get addicted to action? It's a great idea.
Thanks. Dr. Feldman.
Yeah, I'm Gordy Feldman. I teach sociology. A couple things I want to say here. The Boston Globe today has a story that there are 5 universities whose faculty are very active right now on this issue. Harvard, Brandeis, BU, Tufts, and Northeastern, I think. It seems to me we could have a consortium. We should get together. We should have coordinated demonstrations, actions. It would be very powerful, and the media coverage would be far greater if 5 universities did something at once than if one did it. That's one point. The second point is, because I'm a sociologist, we can do a comparative study. I was here during the whole divestment from South Africa movement. I know exactly what happened. I know exactly how and how long the trustees resisted that. I know exactly the point at which they gave in and accepted it. We can learn from that movement, okay? My colleague David Cunningham, who's a brilliant teacher of social movements, can teach us a lot too. So we should use our own resources for the politics of this as well as for the science of it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I should say that there is a list circulating right now that is a list of Boston area professors who are in favor of divestment. And so that's something that we can help circulate to you. And they're trying to get 1,000 professors to come out in favor of divestment within the Boston area.
I just want to add one thing I forgot to say. Schopenhauer says all movements go through 3 phases. One is rejection, the second is ridicule, the third is acceptance. We're somewhere between 1 and 2 right now.
I want to echo that and point out that although in many respects the progressive movement took a big hit in the recent election, we need to notice that the conservatives are no longer feeling comfortable dismissing climate science outright. Do you know what they were saying? Anyone remember?
I'm not
a scientist.
Hey, we are.
I'm not a
I'm not a scientist. And on the one hand, this makes you wonder how would such a person govern in the modern world when so much like the correct response for Ebola. And so
they don't, right?
Well, they do try to govern on Ebola. They tell the people what to do when they get off the plane. So they but it is a change of tone. And so that is actually progress. I'm not a scientist means we're not going to talk about that. Next question, please. It doesn't mean, oh, climate change is a hoax, right? Which is what people are saying. So there is this movement towards, dismissal, finally sort of grudging acceptance, and there seems to be that acceptance, they just don't want to talk about it. And so, that's where I wanted to go with that. Oh, it's not very often someone gets to correct a fact before the class is dismissed. 20%. It's only 20% of the world that doesn't have electricity, not 30. Thank you.
And we've got one question here that was submitted digitally by Ariana, and she asked, considering that we are nowhere near running out of fossil fuels, how can we convince companies and institutions to step away from fossil fuels when it is so profitable for them?
I just want to point out that we have an alumnus and a member of I think still a member of the Board of Trustees who periodically uses his bully pulpit on the op-ed page of the New York Times to remind us that it would be good to have a carbon tax. And the word tax has this problem, but if we called it payment for externalities, I don't know, you have to work on that a little bit because the average person doesn't know what an externality is. But some kind of payment due for the problems caused, that could go a long way towards evening out, or actually maybe tilting the playing field a whole other way, and helping us move along. I'm not sure if that was quite addressing the point, but.
Carbon tax or fee for externalities.
Yeah.
Yeah, I again am more pessimistic on this. We had our chance for a possible cap and trade bill back in 2011, 2012. We had the BP oil spill. Lindsey Graham, McCain, and people who were going to support that basically jumped ship. And if you read Climate Wars by Eric Pulley, that was sort of the end of that effort. Europe has tried to figure out how to get some cost of carbon in their pricing. It has not worked. What is working, and sort of there's a I guess he's in East Anglia. Mike Holmes wrote a book which I found very interesting. Why we disagreed about climate is people around the country have very different sets of values and sociological structures and myths about what's important in science. So his argument is, rather than trying for these broad international agreements, let's go for regional ones. Yes, it's suboptimal, but by the way, California is the 7th largest country in the world. So when we get California setting some policies, that establishes something that will affect the rest of the country. New England's relatively small, and 10 million, 15 million people. We can do something, but it's not going to be very strong. New York is pretty big still, so you're going to get these regional agreements. Northern Europe is doing that, and so and the climate scientists wrestle with it. Should we try for these broad international agreements and these statements that don't seem to work, or should we try to go for this more second best approach, but at least we can establish portfolio targets, which may cost more, but at least certain areas will do that. And California is a prime example of taking that route.
I just. Maybe I've lived in New England and have been a Red Sox fan for too long, but I actually think New England is an important place. If you put all 6 states together, our population and our GDP are both larger than Florida's, and about equivalent to Switzerland's. So that's not insignificant on a global scale. It's not huge. And we've certainly seen in the case of gay marriage what a movement that took root in New England has meant to the country. So I think we could, there isn't, the fact that we're small is not a reason not to do something. In terms of how we're going to deal with the corporations that are making money, I've spent some time talking to some of those corporations and some of the leaders of them, and they are very concerned about the future. Duke Energy, which makes most of its money off of coal-fired power plants, faced in the summer of 2012, the same summer that the Millstone plant had to shut down in Connecticut, they had to shut down most of their coal-fired power plants along the Ohio River because there wasn't enough water in the river to cool the plants. They actually, sorry, I said that wrong. They didn't shut them down. They had to cut back power, cut back their production immensely. And that cost them money. And so they're thinking about this, and they're recognizing that the unrestrained emissions scenario is probably not the most profitable for them. And so, building an academic case around that could be immensely helpful.
I just wanted to quickly talk about Germany again, because those of you who read the news have probably read that Germany actually right now is in trouble because it decided to phase out nuclear energy, and it didn't phase out coal. And it now is facing the problem that its emissions are actually not going down as expected. But what's interesting, and this week, the lesbian woman environment minister and the East German chancellor together, also a woman, decided that they're going to do something about it. And so they are actually going to address the coal industry just like they did the nuclear industry. And this is a conservative chancellor, right? Now, why is that going to work? Even though the coal industry provides very cheap energy and is very lucrative and provides a lot of jobs, has very strong labor support, but because the nuclear revolution has grown so much and has gotten so much momentum and so much support, and people are seeing the health benefits, they're seeing the benefits for their communities. And so the momentum actually helps this conservative government now make such a decision, which they would never have made, even a year ago. So I think there is a chance that if you get the momentum, if you just get the good stuff going, that'll be easier to stop the bad stuff.
Okay, great. Oh, last word? Last word, all right.
We need to pony up. Once upon a time, there was a country that offered to protect, to keep its resources and its petroleum resources in the ground. They gave a specific dollar figure. It was a reasonable figure. I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head. But it was Ecuador. How much was that?
I think it was $1 billion.
So the country's
more than that.
It's like 3 or 4 billion.
Yeah. So they offered, and they let the offer stand for 3 years. And when no one ponied up, or they ponied up to about, I think, 5%, they rescinded the offer. So it's really too bad we had that opportunity, and I wonder what we, as a North American environmental community, could have done to help that.
Yeah. There are also a couple of economists who have offered proposals to buy existing coal reserves to prevent them from being burned. It's called, they're talking about supply-side environmentalism.
Disinvesting.
Yes. So unfortunately, we're out of time. But before we give our panel a nice big round of applause, I just want to remind everybody, there's actually sign-up sheets on that back table. If you guys are interested in more events of this nature about climate change and what Brandeis can do, we're going to have a few more of these throughout the year. I'd also encourage you, there's a place to put your email address. There's an undergraduate student group, Brandeis Climate Justice, that you can sign up for. And we'll let you know about the weekly meetings, as well as if you're a graduate student, please mark it on there. We've started a graduate advisory committee to bring this, to start putting pressure on the administration. So please thank our panel for the wonderful. Enjoy some refreshments on your way out.
And great job by our moderator.
Yeah.